Welcome back, and for this video I'm going to be counting down the 10 most disappointing films I've seen, ones I went into hoping were going to be good or enjoyable but ultimately fell short of that expectation. At number 10 is Robert Rodriguez's Once Upon a Time in Mexico, which was the third leg of the Mariachi trilogy, and while El Mariachi and Desperado weren't exactly pinnacles of cinematic brilliance, they at least were inspired enough to the point that they earned their cult classic status. Once Upon a Time in Mexico, unfortunately, does not join them in this regard, with its meandering, lackluster, forgettable scenes. You even forget it's the third leg of the trilogy. The inclusion of Johnny Depp couldn't even salvage it in any way. Number 9 is Alien Covenant, and you would think that with veteran director Ridley Scott at the helm, this one would at least somewhat be redeemable after the mixed reception Prometheus received. Well, things didn't get much better here. Despite the visual feast that we've all come to know Scott for, the movie bogs itself down with recycled instances of individuals getting offed one by one in ways which we've seen before, while a weak group of characters does little to make you care. Coming in at number 8 is True Legend, which marked the directorial return of the legendary fight choreographer Wen Wuoping after his almost 15-year absence. His comeback would sadly be marred by this unremarkable piece of work. Even with his name attached alongside a star-studded cast, including Jay Chou, Michelle Yeoh, and Kung Lei, and a slew of action sequences, the movie still frequently bordered on boredom. The fact that this was also David Carradine's final film appearance in itself is sad. Number 7 is Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, and it was the debut launch film for Square Pictures, and after performing poorly at the box office, turned out to also be its last. Now, when you think of Final Fantasy, you might think of chocobos, summons, or Moogles. Well, you'll find none of them here, and even if that weren't the case, the story was such a flat, simplistic drag with terribly uninteresting, unmemorable characters. It just kept one feeling empty and uninspired. The movie didn't flop for no reason. At number 6 is David Lynch's Inland Empire. After his 2001 Mulholland Drive received much praise and accolades, he follows it up with this one, and the results unfortunately leave much to be desired. To me, it felt as if Lynch had tons of leftover discarded ideas he hadn't used in his previous works, and then just pieced them together to create Inland Empire. Its abstract experimentations don't really go places, and it might indicate why Lynch himself hasn't made another feature film since. Number 5 on this list is Jurassic World Dominion. Now, every entry after the first Jurassic Park film could technically be seen as a disappointment. However, Dominion's premise presented something new which previous films before it did not, which was to have a story about dinosaurs actually living amongst human populations. But I don't believe I've ever seen a movie that stars dinosaurs that tried everything it could to not be about the dinosaurs. This was Dominion's crowning achievement. The number 4 spot goes to Godzilla Final Wars, and to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Godzilla film franchise, Toho hired Ryuhei Kitamura, who was perhaps the most popular young action director at the time. Being a fan of both Godzilla and Kitamura, it was supposed to be a match made in heaven. Disappointingly, what we got instead was poorly concocted fan service in which they attempted to cram in as many ideas and cliches possible. As a half-century tribute, Godzilla deserves much, much better. Number 3 is Gods and Generals, and I anticipated this movie being the successor to Gettysburg, as a film as it was a book. With the lack of good movies centering on American Civil War history, Gods and Generals completely failed with its slow, unfocused, confusing narrative style and dry plastic acting, frequently shifting between a number of people and places we don't care about. And the benevolent emphasis on Stonewall Jackson in particular was the definition of creepy and cringe. Number 2 on this list belongs to The Tale of Princess Kaguya. There are other Ghibli films that I found disappointing, such as Howl's Moving Castle and The Wind Rises, but I don't think any of them tops this one. The movie plods very slowly with utterly dull, underdeveloped characterization, making you wonder what's the whole point in taking the princess's story seriously. As Isao Takahata's final film contribution and the most expensive movie Ghibli ever made, it should have been much, much more. And number one, unsurprisingly, is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. As the first film in the franchise to be released since the infamous original trilogy, it did have huge shoes to fill. Unfortunately, George Lucas seemed more intent on making a convoluted kids movie with themes and concepts that seasoned fans found awkward, along with bouts of political intrigue that weren't intriguing at all. A nonsense script doomed it from the opening title crawl and set the tone for the rest of the series. And there you go, the 10 films that I was most disappointed with, and there were actually a few others, quite a few actually, that didn't make the cut, but those are the 10. And if you want to share what your most disappointing films are, then leave a comment, and until then, take care.